Technology and intellectual property certainly has a huge impact on work, jobs, and the way that we do HR. So, for example, it should be no surprise that internet and computer skills are mandatory. Anybody that doesn't have them is going to be behind the eight ball. So, while I respect the need to manage, exposure to social media and things like that, our kids do need experience on the computer and using computer skills and being able to think through logically how to manage computer technology. And this is an issue even as our knowledge and service economy dominates manufacturing. Yes, there's still a huge manufacturing base here in the U.S., but our knowledge and service economy has trumped that, and it is so important that we stay on top of our internet and computer skills in order to be able to do so. Manufacturing, though, is not without connection to computers and technology, right? It's not just, somebody manually creating a car. We have programs, we have computer-aided drafting, and we have CNC machines. We can do mass customization of products that we never used to be able to do 30 years ago. The advent of technology enables us to put into our program the customized thing and aspect that we want on a product that we're producing, and it doesn't slow the production process down. It actually can be done quite efficiently when we use CNC and mass customization type technologies for computers. So when I'm trying to hire people, right, who need to work on my assembly line, I need to know that I've got people who know how to use computers and know how to understand the way that technology works, that can use computer equipment to set the programs and implement and monitor those programs. All of those are really important. We also know that most communication these days is via email. It's not face-to-face, or it's via texting, or it's via social media. The whole idea of social media presence and use of social media for communicating our branding, communicating our hiring needs, all sorts of things come through our social media feeds, what we're doing well, where we are struggling, sending out notices. It's all done through social media. So technology-based communication is key. But what we do know about technology-based communication, for those of you that took 522, you remember there was a continuum of richness in our communication networks and our communication channels. And when we use more technology, we are more disconnected from the face-to-face communication, which means we lose context and we lose emotional cues. And it's that context and emotional cues that enables us to have and build relationships with others. And so it is important that we recognize there are times when email or face-to-face communication works really well and is really important. And there are other times when being face-to-face makes more sense. For example, if we're communicating a very difficult topic that could be misinterpreted, it is absolutely important that we talk face-to-face. When it's an emotionally charged issue, we should be talking face-to-face because we need to be able to respond to those emotions readily. That doesn't mean that we can't send an email that might not fire somebody up, but we should be using emails to communicate facts, not to communicate emotions. And that's often why we hear kids, younger folks, right? They'll break up or they'll just ghost people, on their social media, or they break up to them via text message. And, that doesn't mean that there aren't minor situations where you've gone on a date and the person texts you, hey, how you doing? You want to go out? And you go, yeah, I don't think this is going to work for me, but thank you for asking anyway. That's one thing. And it's another thing if you've been dating somebody for months and then you just stop responding to text messages. It's kind of rude. Because people do it because they don't want to deal with the emotional upheaval that comes with having to make hard decisions and having to have difficult conversations. And I think we've done a disservice to our kids by not teaching them how to have difficult conversations, because even as grown-ups, we don't know how to do difficult conversations, to be honest. No surprise, e-learning is very hot still, and continues to be. Artificial intelligence now is the big hot button. We use artificial intelligence in all ways, obviously, even in social media, you have the artificial intelligence options through Meta. If you're on Facebook, that sort of summarizes your discussion list so people can weigh in about what the majority of the people think about a certain thing. Honestly, I turned that off on my social media because I don't really want them summarizing my stuff for me. I want people to engage with me. I'd rather them talk to me and engage with me. But artificial intelligence can be used to develop all sorts of things for businesses. There's nothing wrong with using it. It's how we choose to use it that becomes more problematic. And in the field of HR, artificial intelligence is being lauded as this great tool to streamline hiring, to do it in a way that we think or we presume will be without human bias. But here's the challenge. Artificial intelligence is only as good as the algorithm that we write for it. And if we have the information that we're feeding the artificial intelligence is based on biased information, it's like the adage, right? Garbage in, garbage out. If it's biased going in, it's going to be biased coming out. So we want to be incredibly careful how we use artificial intelligence in the field of HR. I think it's fine to have it take a first cut at resumes to tell us what they think is the highest priorities. But I can tell you from the perspective of an applicant, having to find the right words that the artificial intelligence wants is really challenging in my resume. So I have to rewrite my resume so it has the key words that the scanning software is looking for in order to be able to make a decision whether or not I get through the first screening. So we do have some challenges there with respect to how we are using artificial intelligence in the pre-screening aspect. I always recommend use it to pre-screen, but make sure you put a human eyeball on the ones that the AI has rejected, because it might be a word change, it might be a subtle change in the way things are worded that might get them booted from the artificial intelligence network, but it actually we would catch that with our own eyes, and then we would hopefully keep that resume in the pile. Our goal in our initial assessments, as we'll get to when we talk about staffing, our goal is not to, minimize our pool to the top 3 candidates. Our goal in our first assessment of resumes is to eliminate those that are absolutely just not qualified for the job. Anybody who's borderline, I always highly recommend keeping them in. And I'll talk more about that when we talk about diversity and unconscious bias and those sorts of things in one of our future lectures here. Because artificial intelligence, can be biased, and we don't want to cause anything to bias people. So we'll talk more about recruiting and how we do it in a way that minimizes unconscious bias and helps our pool to be as rich as possible in terms of what's available. Technology and intellectual property, as we know, cyber attacks are huge. Cybersecurity is paramount now. We all probably, if you have not already, you certainly will be, in not long ahead, double authentication and sometimes triple authentication of things to be able to get access to secure data and secure information. I go through double and triple authentication when I need to go onto the IRS website, right? If I want to go pay my quarterly taxes or things along that nature. It's a constant battle like that to do that. So we want to make sure that we are protecting our organization. We are obligated as organizations to protect your personal data, the personal data of the organization itself, company secrets and things like that, and any kind of financials that we need to protect. So our job, is to make sure that from a cyber perspective that we are protecting people to the best of our abilities. Lastly, this idea of non-disclosure and non-compete agreements, and this is about intellectual property issues, right? Right now, things are kind of in flux with non-compete agreements. There had been a sweeping ruling by the FTC to outlaw non-compete agreements, which I was kind of excited about personally, because I don't like them. But apparently the federal courts are holding that up. So I don't know where this is going to go. But just be aware, keep your ear to the ground on these issues, because these non-compete agreements affect all of us, and it is, at least they have been trying to narrow non-compete agreements to figure out if we narrow the scope of the non-compete agreements, leaving it for only senior level executives or people with really difficult jobs that are that have a lot of access to company secrets and intellectual property, then yes, a non-compete agreement makes sense for those higher level employees. But I don't know if you knew this, but Jimmy John's, the sandwich company, had their sandwich makers sign a non-compete agreement. Like, I don't know about you, but no offense. What does making a sandwich, whether you make it at Subway or Jimmy John's, what difference does it make, in terms of how you make the sandwich? There's really nothing different. You can get in and out of both places really fast, so it's not the speed with which you're getting these sandwiches made. If it's the ingredients, the people making the sandwiches really are not sourcing the ingredients. They don't know the secret recipes. They're simply compiling the sandwiches and putting them out there. But Jimmy John's would tell them that they were not allowed to work for other fast food restaurants in the area for risk of sharing their company's secrets. So when we limit people at that lower level from being able to access jobs in a reasonable geographic area, we are stopping their ability to make money. We're stopping their ability to make a living based on what their expertise may or may not be. So again, if you've got the director of advertising and marketing for your company and you're leaving and you're going somewhere else, sure, we might implement a non-compete agreement for them, but not necessarily for others out there. So that non-disclosure agreement also is really important. And we should not be disclosing the intellectual property of the company with competitors, because that's against the law, and that is a violation of our responsibilities with the organization. And I do support non-disclosure agreements. I am not as supportive about non-compete agreements, but right now they're limited, but they're not sweepingly, gone as the way that the law originally, or the ruling, had come down from the FTC about that. So we'll just have to wait and hear if that changes. Um, and we either get non-compete agreements that are certainly allowed with no restrictions, or whether they will continue to have some restrictions to them or disappear altogether. So only time will tell.